Hey guys, it's Arya filling in for Adam again. If you want to see more of me, you can find my channel linked in the description box down below. The New York Times recently came out with this editorial. It went kind of viral on TikTok. It got like almost 2 million views, and it is them interviewing the inspector generals that got fired at the beginning of this Trump term. That is not to be confused with the inspector generals that got fired at the beginning of Trump's first term, okay? Because this is not the first time that he's did that. Actually, he tripled it this time. So the first time around, he only fired 5. This time around, he fired 17. Great.
Since starting DOGE, Elon Musk has saved taxpayers hundreds of billions.
So the actual savings is around $2 billion, according to budget experts.
So Elon needs help, and we spoke to some people who can help him. Here's how much money they've saved you.
$75 billion, well over $10 billion, I think $10.8 billion.
$30 billion hard dollars.
$14.5 billion at least.
Hundreds of millions of dollars at NASA.
They might not be 19, and they don't have chainsaws, but these people know a thing or two about saving you money.
We did an audit that was released in October of last year, looking at pricing for spare parts for the C-17, the big transport. We identified one particularly egregious spare part. I believe it was a 7,943% markup on a soap dispenser.
There was this rapper, I think his name was Nuke Bizzle. And Nuke Bizzle, he got so comfortable stealing this unemployment insurance fraud money that he actually went online and did a video.
I just been swiping for EBD, go to the bank and stack at least.
It was the video that led to his capture.
Nuke Bizzle boasted about getting rich off fake COVID-19 relief funds.
Former Secretary David Shulkin had taken a European trip with his wife. It was essentially a couple of hours of meetings, but the rest of the time they were sightseeing in Europe, as well as getting tickets to the Wimbledon tennis tournament. The government had paid for this trip, so we did the investigation. The secretary had to pay back the value of the Wimbledon.
Guys, what do you think he would have to say if he found out that we have a United States president that overcharges the Secret Service to stay at the hotels that he owns, that will force the Secret Service and the entire White House staff and his entire administrative staff that travels with him to stay at his hotels internationally, even when they are nowhere near whatever press conference he's doing? I think in Ireland, they made him stay like 3 hours away from the meeting that he had. Like, just so that they could give him that extra little bit of money.
Tickets, the value of his wife's trip.
Expensive soap, fancy tennis tournaments. You'd think Trump and Musk would be dying to work with these people. Unfortunately, that's not how this story goes.
Dear Christy.
Dear Larry.
Dear Hannibal.
On behalf of President Donald J. Trump,
I'm writing to inform you
that due to changing priorities,
Your position as Inspector General
Inspector General of Department of Defense
at the United States Agency for International Development
of the Small Business Administration,
Department of Labor,
Veterans Affairs,
Interior,
Health and Human Services
is terminated effective immediately.
Thank you for your service.
Signed, Trent Morse, Deputy Director, Office of Presidential Personnel.
Literally got fired via a 2-line email. And these are people that are supposed to be not subjected to partisan biases. They're supposed to be in the middle. They're not supposed to be shuffling in and out with administration changes. Now, these inspector generals are actually suing to get their jobs back. These 8 inspector generals, quote, they say that Trump shouldn't have been able to fire them in late January without first notifying Congress, and that the White House ignored regulations around their removal that existed to protect them from political interference and retribution. This is what happens when you have people that never took like a basic intro level civics course, making up the majority of the electorate, because they don't know that these systems already exist. Like when you hear someone saying waste, fraud, and abuse, waste, fraud, and abuse, waste, fraud, and abuse nonstop, and you don't know that there already exists an entire entity. I don't really know what inspectors general qualify. Like it's not a department really, it's like a group. I don't know, inspectors general, specifically whose job it is to make this, whose job it is to act independently and to supervise these agencies and to hold these agencies accountable when they're not using their American taxpayer dollars correctly. Yet for some reason, the first thing that the White House did was fire the Inspector General for USAID, the entire agency that Elon Musk just absolutely gutted and Donald Trump tried to end via executive order, that he's disobeying judge court rulings. Like that whole, they did You would think that if this was a genuine administration that was genuinely trying to enact change and that was genuinely trying to do its best for the American people, I don't know, maybe they'd consult with the person that was in that official position prior to the administration that would know the inner workings of USAID. And before the Macedonians comment down below and yell at me and say that they're also corrupt, prove it. If these are all criminals, if they're all so corrupt, if they're committing fraud, which is a crime, which is a criminal crime, prove it in a court of law. There's ways and processes to go about this. But no, instead we get this.
Just listen to some of the appalling waste we have already identified. $22 billion from HHS to provide free housing and cars for illegal aliens.
Now, I would play the whole thing, but I don't want you all to become suicidal and nihilistic. So, it is literally 3 minutes of our American president, who has access to every government agency, who has access to every government database, who has access to the highest level security clearance, using Twitter as his main source for his joint address to Congress. And it's just 3 minutes of him quoting tweets. This is him taking credit for all of the waste, fraud, and abuse that has been cut. The waste, fraud, and abuse, by the way, that got fact-checked by CNN. As of the day of Trump's address to Congress, DOGE claimed on its website that its work has saved an estimated $105 billion for taxpayers. But it hasn't provided evidence to corroborate a figure that high. And it goes on to list exactly these contradictions. They are citing things that happened before the Trump administration. They are triple counting cancellations. They're doing things that are just statistically inaccurate. Like, it's a joke. They're also decontextualizing everything. And so one of the things that they took out of context was these transgender mice. Okay, Donald Trump is making it seem like United States taxpayers are out there funding research studies that are making mice transgender for no reason, which CNN says this claim needs context. The studies were meant to figure out how these treatments might affect the health of humans who take them, not for the purpose of making mice transgender. Now, it might sound like a semantic thing at first. It might sound a little nitpicky, okay? But this would be the equivalent of saying that we're funding studies to amputate people when the research is like testing for the comfortability of the prosthetic. And so the White House couldn't deal with this fact check being out there. Okay, so they had to put out an entire article calling CNN losers. Like, this is official. This is official from the White House. The fake news losers at CNN immediately tried to fact check it, but President Trump was right, as usual. Fact. Under the Biden administration, the National Institutes of Health doled out millions of dollars in taxpayer-funded grants for institutes across the country to perform transgender experiments on mice. They're experimenting to make the mice transgender, and then he cherry-picks some quotes that use some big words that he thinks prove his point. If you look at the very list that he's linking here of all of these grants, okay, and you look at the literal first one, okay, you see here that this project is about wounds. Molecular mechanisms of hormone-mediated sex differences in wound healing. This study seeks to transform current concepts of how hormones modulate wound repair with the dual aim of improving care for a marginalized patient population and developing potential new approaches for millions of patients with chronic wounds. Note the dual aim, okay? It is primarily seeking to investigate the difference in how men and women heal their wounds. Sex has received a growing interest as a factor in wound healing, and some studies show higher rates of non-healing wounds in men. It has long been known that male rodent testosterone impairs via all these like big science words. If you read the whole abstract, it's a scientific study with the purpose of investigating how we can adjust wound healing, wound recovery, wound treatment, specific to the patient, specific to whether or not they're male or female or transgender or on hormone therapy or whatever. But like, it's just whether, like, what their hormones are. It's just a quite literal biological study on just how wounds heal. Why is this being used as an example of transgender mice? This administration never ceases to amaze me with the absolute straws that they will pull out of thin air. You know, every accusation is a confession. So one has to wonder, is the Republican Party holding mice hostage and making them transgender? I don't know.